I was officially dead when they put a price tag on me. That was the first thought that surfaced when consciousness crawled back into my body, slow, painful, unwelcome. Death apparently had a return policy, and someone had decided I was worth reselling. I blinked. Or tried to. The glass curved inches from my face, cold and faintly humming. A capsule. Transparent, reinforced. The kind used to transport valuables or liabilities, depending on who was paying. Condensation fogged the inside, carrying the sharp, sour scent of suppressed pheromones. Not just mine, everyone's. The auction hall stretched beyond the glass in muted shadows. Steel walls. Black flooring polished to a mirror sheen. Rows of elevated platforms. No windows. No warmth. The lighting was low, deliberate, designed to make the merchandise glow, while the buyers stayed half-hidden. Classic. If I squinted, I could almost pretend this was my funeral. Same sterile vibe. Same people who'd benefited from my disappearance now standing around, pretending not to recognize the corpse. The difference was that at my funeral, no one had tried to outbid each other for the rights to my body. A soft chime echoed through the hall. Lot 37, a voice announced. Smooth and bored. Omega. Male. Verified. Status unclaimed. Condition stable. Unclaimed. I almost laughed. They had burned my name out of every system 6 months ago. Declared me dead during a border op gone wrong. No body recovered. Very tragic. Very convenient. I'd even mourned myself a little, back when I still thought that mattered. Apparently death was just a rebranding. Figures shifted in the darkness. Alphas, mostly. I felt them before I saw them. If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting. Power pressed against the glass in waves. Dominance, hunger, curiosity sharpened into possession. Their pheromones were dampened by the field, but not erased. They never really were. Opening bid at 2 million, the voice continued. A murmur rippled through the room. 3, 4, 5. The numbers climbed with disturbing ease. I tracked voices automatically, cataloging accents, cadence, the subtle tells of people used to buying whatever they wanted. My pulse stayed steady. Shock had a way of freezing things like that. Or maybe I just used it up already. Someone laughed softly. Doesn't look like much. I tilted my head a fraction, letting the light catch my face. If they wanted a trophy, I could at least be aesthetic about it. Another chime rang out. And then, silence. Not the expectant kind. Not the tense, competitive hush. This was different. It spread like a held breath. I felt it before I saw him. The pressure in the room shifted, heavier, colder, as if gravity itself had adjusted to accommodate a single presence. Footsteps. Unhurried, precise. A tall figure stepped into the light. VICTOR Kane. Even if I hadn't recognized him from the classified briefings, the infamous Alpha who broke Omegas without raising his voice, I would have known. Control radiated off him in clean, brutal lines. Dark suit. No insignia. No wasted movement. His gaze flicked to the capsule once, sharp and assessing, like he was already dismantling me in his head. The auctioneer swallowed. Ah. VICTOR Kane enters the bidding. No one else spoke. Victor didn't look at the other buyers, didn't acknowledge the room. Sold, he said calmly. No number. No pause. The chime sounded again, louder this time. Final. Lot 37 sold to VICTOR Kane. Just like that. The glass hummed as the capsule disengaged. I met his eyes through the transparent barrier, cool, unreadable, frighteningly steady. So this was the Alpha who'd bought me to break me. I curled my fingers into a loose fist and smiled to myself, slow and private. They had no idea what they'd just purchased. Shock burned into anger. Anger settled into something colder. Resolve. If they thought death had made me weaker, they were about to learn what came back instead. The first thing I noticed about VICTOR Kane's residence was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, not the comforting kind. This silence was engineered. Thick, controlled. Stripped of anything unnecessary. Even the hum of machinery was muted, tuned to a frequency that felt more like pressure than sound. The transport doors slid open with a soft hiss. White light spilled across black stone floors polished to perfection. Minimalist. Clean. Expensive in a way that didn't need to announce itself. A fortress disguised as a home. I stepped out when the restraints unlocked, my movements slow and compliant. Every instinct I had screamed to catalog exits, blind spots, response times, but that part of me stayed buried beneath lowered eyes and carefully shallow breaths. Omega. Trophy. Property. The staff lined the corridor in perfect symmetry. Betas, mostly. A few omegas. None of them met my gaze. Their eyes dipped the moment mine lifted, fear rippling through them like a reflex. Not of me. Of him. Victor walked ahead without looking back, already certain I would follow. He didn't rush, didn't drag. Control didn't need force. It assumed obedience. I gave it to him. We stopped in a wide atrium, all glass and steel, overlooking a private courtyard stripped of ornamentation. No art, no warmth. Even the plants looked disciplined. Victor turned. Up close, the rumors almost undersold him. He was taller than I expected, broad-shouldered without being bulky, his presence sharp and contained like a blade sheathed just beneath the skin. His eyes, dark, cool, rested on me with clinical interest. Rules, he said. One word. Flat. Absolute. I folded my hands in front of me and lowered my head a fraction. Just enough. The posture of someone who'd learned when not to provoke. Yes, Alpha, I said softly. His gaze narrowed, just a touch. Testing. Measuring. You speak when spoken to, Victor continued. You go where you're told. You touch nothing without permission. You don't leave this property unless I allow it. A pause. You don't lie to me. The last one wasn't louder. It didn't need to be. I nodded. Understood. Another beat of silence. He watched for flinching. For resistance. For fear. I gave him none of the interesting reactions. Your room is secured, he said. Medical checks will be performed daily. If you're injured, report it. If you disobey me, I'll regret it. I finished quietly, eyes still downcast. That earned me a long look. Most Omegas begged. Some cried. Others tried defiance as a last, stupid gesture of pride. VICTOR Kane broke them all the same way, by waiting for them to realize resistance was pointless. I let him believe I already had. He gestured once, sharp. 2 guards moved in to escort me down a side corridor. I walked between them without protest, mapping every camera, every subtle seam in the walls, every invisible security field that made the air prickle against my skin. Layered defenses, redundancies, blind zones that weren't blind at all, just traps. Good. This wasn't a place built for comfort. It was built for containment. As the doors to my assigned quarters sealed behind me, I allowed myself a small, private smile. VICTOR Kane thought he'd bought an Omega to break. I'd just walked into the most secure puzzle I'd ever seen, and I couldn't wait to take it apart. If VICTOR Kane's residence was a fortress, then it was also a maze, and I intended to learn every turn. They let me move freely within designated zones. That alone told me 2 things. First, Victor trusted his security more than he distrusted. Me second. He wanted to see what I'd do with the illusion of freedom. I kept my head down, and my pace unhurried as I walked the corridors. Smooth walls, seamless doors, lighting that shifted subtly depending on the time of day. Cameras hidden behind smoked glass. Sensors disguised as decorative lines in the floor. Every few steps the air changed pressure, temperature, density. Security fields layered so precisely they almost felt elegant. I counted them anyway. The training zone sat at the heart of the compound, all matte black surfaces and reinforced panels. I paused at the threshold, watching from the sidelines as a group of enforcers ran drills. Their movements were sharp, efficient, disciplined. So was the man supervising them. Don't lock your shoulders, a voice snapped. You'll be dead before you throw a punch. Rowan. I recognized him from the brief glance I'd caught during my arrival. Beta. Tall, lean, with steel-gray eyes that missed nothing. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly where he stood in the hierarchy and intended to stay there. His gaze flicked to me, assessing, Not dismissive. Calculating. "You're the Omega," he said, more observation than greeting. I inclined my head. "Theo." A pause. Then a short nod. "Rowan Victor's second?" Of course he was. "Stay out of the training zone unless instructed," Rowan continued. "This isn't a playground." "I wouldn't dream of it," I replied mildly. Something like amusement crossed his face. Or maybe suspicion. Hard to tell with people like him, betas who survived by aligning themselves with power without ever fully submitting to it. He turned back to the trainees, dismissing me without another word. I filed him away mentally, loyal, ambitious, sharp, dangerous in quieter ways than an alpha. The Giloy sector, residential wing, felt different. Softer lighting, warmer air, still controlled but less overtly so. That was where I met Iris. She nearly walked into me at the intersection of two corridors, arms full of data slates. She froze when she saw me, eyes widening just a fraction before she masked it. "Oh, sorry," she said quickly. Her voice was gentle, calm. "Omega, I didn't expect anyone here." "No harm done," I said, stepping back. She studied me openly now, her gaze flicking over my face, my posture, the faint tracking band at my wrist. Something in her expression shifted. Recognition, maybe, or concern. "You're the new arrival," she said. "I'm Iris. Medical. Lucky me," I murmured. That earned a small smile. Hesitant but genuine. "If you need anything." "Within reason," she added carefully, lowering her voice. "You can ask." Before I could reply, the air changed. I felt it like a static shock along my spine. Sharp, sudden, entirely unwelcome. My breath caught. My skin prickled. Victor Kane had entered the corridor behind me. I didn't turn right away. I didn't need to. My body had already reacted. Heat blooming low and tight. Confusion slamming into me without warning. "What the hell was that?" "Doctor," Victor acknowledged coolly. "Alpha," Iris replied, stepping aside immediately. I forced myself to turn, keeping my expression neutral despite the disorienting rush still humming under my skin. Victor's eyes flicked over me, unreadable. For half a second, something sparked between us, recognition without context. His jaw tightened imperceptibly. Then it was gone. "Back to your quarters," he ordered. "Yes, Alpha," I said automatically. As I walked away, my pulse finally began to slow. Confusion gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. I'd survived assassination attempts, torture drills, and being declared dead. This strange, involuntary reaction, that was new, and it unsettled me more than anything else so far. The first attempt on my life happened 3 days after the auction, which, frankly, felt a little late. I was returning from medical, routine scan, iris carefully neutral, pretending not to notice how my vitals never quite behaved like a normal Omega's, when the corridor lights dimmed by a fraction. Not enough to trigger alarms. Just enough to tell me someone had overridden a secondary system. Good choice. Bad timing. The underground corridor smelled faintly of ozone and cleaning agents. The kind of place no one lingered unless they had a reason. Service access. Utility lines. A dead zone between living spaces and operations. I slowed my steps. Footsteps echoed behind me. Too soft for guards. Too deliberate for staff. I didn't turn. The blade came out of nowhere, thin ceramic designed to bypass scanners. It slid toward my throat with professional precision. I ducked. The move felt almost lazy, my body reacting before my thoughts caught up. The blade skimmed past, missing skin by millimeters. I twisted, grabbed the attacker's wrist, and drove my elbow back into his ribs. Something cracked. He gasped. I didn't give him time to recover. We went down hard, bodies colliding with the corridor wall. I used his momentum, not my strength, dislocating his shoulder, slamming. His head into the reinforced panel just enough to rattle, not kill. Killing would be messy. Killing would ask questions. He was an Omega. Young. Wired with desperation and borrowed courage. Idiot, I muttered, wrenching the knife from his grip. His eyes were wide, panicked. You're not supposed to. I slammed his head again. He went limp, Breath shallow but steady. Alarms would trigger soon. I had maybe 30 seconds. I worked fast. I cut my own palm, shallow but bloody, and smeared it across his sleeve. Then I activated his comm unit, flooding it with a frantic message, half-coherent, obsessive, the kind that screamed instability. He's dangerous. I had to stop him. Alpha will see. Alpha must see. I dropped the knife into his hand, closed his fingers around it. By the time security burst into the corridor, I was on my knees beside him, shaking convincingly, blood dripping down my wrist. I didn't know what to do, I stammered. He attacked me. He kept saying, "You were in danger." Guards restrained the unconscious Omega without hesitation. They barely looked at me. Victor arrived seconds later. The temperature in the corridor dropped the moment he stepped in. His gaze flicked over the scene. Knife, blood, bodies, then settled on me. Sharp, focused, assessing. "You're hurt," he said. "Just a scratch," I replied, letting my voice tremble. I think he was unstable. Obsessive. Victor crouched beside the restrained Omega, studying him with cold detachment. Rowan appeared at his shoulder, jaw tight. "This doesn't fit," Rowan murmured. "No," Victor agreed. His eyes lifted back to me. "It doesn't." For a moment, I wondered if I'd miscalculated. Then Victor straightened. "Increase internal surveillance." Quietly. "I want to know who encouraged this." His attention lingered on me again. Longer this time. "Go to your quarters," he ordered. "Medical will check you." "Yes, Alpha." As I walked away, my blood still sang with adrenaline. My hands shook, not from fear but from the thrill of it. First blood had been drawn. And it wasn't mine. Victor summoned me to the training hall the next morning. No explanation, no witnesses. Just a clipped message delivered through the system and a locked door that opened the moment I stepped inside. The hall was empty. Matte black walls absorbed sound, leaving the space oddly intimate despite its size. Training mats covered the floor. Weapons were racked with obsessive precision along one wall. Victor stood at the center, sleeves rolled up, jacket discarded, hands loosely wrapped. For the first time, he looked human. Dangerous, yes. Controlled to the point of obsession, but human. "Come here," he said. I did. Slow steps, careful posture, head slightly lowered, but not enough to look frightened. I'd learned the difference early in life. Fear invited breaking. Calm invited scrutiny. "You know how to fight," Victor stated. Not a question. "I know how to survive," I replied. A corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Or maybe a warning. "Show me." I hesitated just long enough to seem uncertain, then stepped onto the mat. He moved instantly, faster than most alphas I'd trained against. His strike came sharp and direct, meant to test reflexes, not dominate. I blocked. The impact traveled up my arm, solid and grounding. He didn't hold back, but neither did I. We circled, movements clean and economical. No wasted energy. No theatrics. "You fight like a beta," he said after a narrow miss. "High praise," I shot back. "Less ego." That did earn a smile. Brief. Involuntary. We exchanged a series of strikes, each one closer than the last. I could feel his attention sharpening, recalibrating. He wasn't just assessing my skills anymore. He was reacting. When his hand caught my wrist, the contact sent a jolt through me. Heat flaring under my skin, breath stalling in my chest. I froze, for half a second too long. Victor felt it too. His grip tightened, his jaw clenched. The air between us thickened, charged in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. "What was that?" he demanded quietly. I swallowed. "Static? Don't lie." "I'm not," I said, then added lightly. "Unless you've installed shock floors I wasn't warned about." His eyes searched my face, frustration flickering beneath the calm. Control, absolute unyielding control, was slipping just slightly, and it scared him. That scared me more. He released me abruptly and stepped back, breathing measured. "Enough." We stood there in silence, the echo of something unfinished hanging heavy between us. "You're not what I was told," Victor said at last. I met his gaze. "You bought me without asking." Another pause. This one longer. "For your own safety," he said, almost to himself. "You should stop testing limits." I smiled, soft and disarming. "With respect, Alpha. You're the one doing the testing." For a moment I saw it. The fracture in the legend. Not cruelty, not malice. Loneliness, responsibility. Fear of losing control over something he didn't understand. And for the first time since the auction, I didn't see a monster standing in front of me. I saw a man holding himself together by sheer force of will. As I left the training hall, my pulse refused to slow. Attraction was dangerous, and this one felt lethal. If you want to understand a pack, don't watch its alphas. Watch its corridors. The places people assume are empty are always the most honest. Victor's residence changed at night. The lights dimmed to a cooler spectrum, security cycles shifted and doors that stayed, politely sealed during the day, began to whisper open for those who knew how to ask, or threaten, or bribe. I learned quickly which was required where. I was returning to my quarters when I noticed it, the slightest delay in a door cycle near the administrative wing. Not a malfunction, a manual override that had been reset too cleanly. Someone had been where they shouldn't. I waited, counted breaths, then slipped into the corridor once the patrol passed. The offices were pristine, almost sterile. Glass walls, minimal furniture, data panels embedded flush with the surfaces. Victor ran his operations like he ran his life. Everything visible, everything controlled, which made the hidden passage behind Rowan's office especially interesting. It took me less than a minute to find it, a pressure seam disguised as part of the wall's design. I slid inside and let the panel seal behind me. The air smelled different in the passage. Dust, metal, secrets. Voices drifted through the narrow space. Rowan's, unmistakable, calm, controlled. "You're running out of time," he said. Another voice answered, distorted by distance. Older. Alpha. Council, if I had to guess. "He's destabilizing the pack," the voice replied. "The Omega was a mistake." "No," Rowan said quietly. "The Omega is leverage. Kane is the problem." My blood cooled. "The bond hasn't manifested yet," the Alpha continued. "But it will. When it does, Kane will lose control. We can't allow an Alpha of his influence to be compromised." "So you want him removed," Rowan said. "A martyr, preferably. A traitor, if necessary." Silence, stretched. "And the Omega?" Rowan asked. A pause, then, colder, disposable. Something sharp settled in my chest. Not hurt, not fear. Rage, clean and precise. Rowan wasn't Victor's loyal second. He was a contingency plan. A knife held behind the pack's back, waiting for the right angle. I slipped back into the corridor unnoticed, my steps soundless despite the storm gathering under my skin. By morning, I had choices. Expose Rowan. Let Victor crush the conspiracy with brute force. Or, I smiled faintly, or accelerate it. The next move was easy. A misplaced data slate in a shared terminal. An altered security timestamp. A whisper dropped in the right ear at the right moment. People like Rowan didn't need lies. They needed confirmation of what they already believed. By midday, the pack was restless. By evening, Victor knew something was wrong. He summoned Rowan. I watched from the upper level, leaning casually against the railing, every inch the obedient Omega. Rowan passed beneath me. Posture perfect, expression unreadable. He didn't look up. Victor's office doors sealed behind them. The tension in the air tightened like a drawn wire. I felt it then, faint, distant, but undeniable. The echo of Victor's control straining under pressure, not breaking. Yet, I turned away before the meeting ended, my jaw tight, my hands steady. They thought I was the weakest piece on the board. They were wrong. I wasn't the prize. I wasn't the bait. I was the trigger. And the pack was about to learn how badly it had misjudged me. The system locked us in at 2:14. I noticed because the air changed first. Not temperature, pressure, A subtle hum slid under my skin, sharp and wrong, like static gathering before a storm. The isolated chamber was designed for containment, reinforced walls, no windows, a single overhead light dimmed to night cycle. Emergency protocol, according to the small red indicator blinking near the door. Biological anomaly detected. Of course it was. I leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, trying very hard not to acknowledge the way my pulse had begun to race. My body felt too aware of itself, every breath loud, every nerve tuned too tightly. "This is new," I said lightly, mostly to fill the silence. "I don't usually malfunction on a schedule." Victor didn't answer. He stood across the room, rigid, hands clenched at his sides. His control, usually immaculate, felt strained, like glass under pressure. The bond between us, whatever the hell it was, thrummed in the space, undeniable now. "Your vitals spiked," he said finally. His voice was low, careful. Medical flagged it as a heat response. I laughed. "Too fast. Too sharp. That's impossible. Is it?" I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Heat wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not without warning. Not without the familiar cascade of signals and safeguards failing one by one. I'd been trained to recognize it, suppress it, weaponize it if necessary. This wasn't that. This felt targeted. "I'm fine," I said, pushing off the wall. "Bad idea." The moment I moved closer, the sensation intensified. Warmth coiling low in my abdomen, breath stuttering despite my best efforts. I stopped abruptly. Victor noticed. Of course he did. "Don't," he warned. "Trust me," I muttered. Wasn't planning on it. The silence pressed in again, thick with things neither of us wanted to name. I focused on the floor, on the steady rhythm of my breathing. Humor bubbled up instinctively, a shield I'd polished over years of survival. "Well," I offered, "if this is your idea of breaking omegas, it's very inefficient." A muscle jumped in Victor's jaw. "This isn't about breaking you," he said. That made me look up. For a split second, the mask slipped. Not desire, not dominance, fear, not of me, but of what this meant. "I can feel it," he continued, quieter now. "Whatever this is, it shouldn't exist." "No," I agreed softly. "It shouldn't." The room felt smaller. Every inch between us mattered too much. I hated how aware I was of him, of the steadiness of his breathing, the restraint in his posture, the way he was holding himself back with sheer willpower. I hated even more that part of me wanted him to fail. The realization hit hard, cold, and sobering. I stepped back deliberately, increasing the distance. "This stops now." Victor didn't move. His gaze followed me, sharp and searching, as if he were trying to see through every layer I'd ever built. "You're afraid," he said. I smiled, thin and practiced. "Of course I am. I'd have to be stupid not to be." That wasn't the truth. Not all of it. I wasn't afraid of heat. Or proximity. I was afraid of being seen. Of this strange, unwanted pull stripping away the careful roles we'd both been playing. The indicator light blinked green. The lock disengaged with a soft click. I exhaled slowly, tension draining from my shoulders as the pressure eased. "Good night, Alpha," I said, already turning away. Behind me, Victor didn't answer, but I felt his gaze linger long after I left the room. Heavy with questions neither of us was ready to face. The medical sector smelled like antiseptic and restraint. I lay on the diagnostic bed, with my wrists free and my patience thin, watching. The ceiling panels cycle through soft light patterns meant to calm patients. It wasn't working. My body still felt wrong. Too warm, too alert, as if it were listening for a voice it didn't want to hear. Iris stood at the console, fingers hovering over the display. She hadn't met my eyes since she'd called me in. "That anomaly from last night," she said carefully. "The system flagged it again this morning." "Lucky me," I replied. "I'm trending." She didn't smile. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. I pushed myself up on my elbows. "You didn't bring me here for routine scans, did you?" Iris closed the display and finally turned to face me. Her expression was calm, professional. too controlled for an Omega who just watched a set of impossible readings rewrite themselves in real time. "You were supposed to be dead," she said. The words landed clean and sharp. "I've heard," I said lightly. "It's been a whole thing." "This is different," she continued. "Your records were erased from council archives. Not sealed, not classified. Destroyed. That only happens when someone doesn't want a body," I finished. "Or a reminder." She inhaled, steadying herself. "When someone wants a threat gone before it manifests." My humor dried up. Iris stepped closer, lowering her voice. "What happened between you and Victor last night wasn't a malfunction. It was a bond response." I stared at her. "That's not possible." "It is," she said softly. "And that's the problem." She brought the display back up, angling it so I could see. Biometric overlays, hormone spikes, neural feedback loops, 2 distinct signatures, mirroring each other in patterns I'd only seen in old case studies. "True mates," Iris said. "Rare, volatile, unpredictable, dangerous," I murmured. She nodded. "To the council? Yes. To the balance of power? Absolutely." The room felt suddenly smaller. The memories clicked into place. The heat, the static, the way Victor's control had cracked just enough for me to see what lived underneath. "They'll kill him," I said. "And you," Iris replied, preferably quietly. I swung my legs off the bed, grounding myself in the cool floor. "So that's it. I was sold to the one alpha I couldn't be near." "You were sold because of him," Iris corrected gently. "When the first indicators appeared months ago, the council moved fast. You were declared dead to remove the variable. But you survived." I laughed, short and incredulous. "Story of my life." "This isn't a joke, Theo," she said, sharper now. "If the bond completes, Victor loses the kind of control the council depends on. An alpha like him, compromised, becomes a liability." "And Rowan?" I asked quietly. Her hesitation was answer enough. "He knows," Iris said, "or suspects. He's been feeding the council updates, pushing for intervention." Cold clarity settled over me. I stood, rolling my shoulders back. "Then they picked the wrong solution." Iris searched my face. "What are you going to do?" I thought of Victor, his restraint, his fear, the way he'd stepped back when he could have taken more. "I'm going to make sure," I said evenly, "that they regret ever deciding I should stay dead." The scale of the danger finally came into focus, and for the first time I understood why they'd tried to erase me. The central hall was full. That alone should have been warning enough. Victor stood at the heart of it, flanked by senior members of the pack. Rowan, half-A, stepped behind his right shoulder, close enough to look loyal, far enough to move fast. Glass walls rose 3 stories high, flooding the space with cold daylight. Public, symbolic, safe. That was the lie. I felt it before anything happened. The same pressure as before, sharp and insistent, crawling under my skin. The bond pulled tight, like a wire drawn too far. Danger. The council envoys stood across from Victor, faces polite, voices smooth. Words about cooperation, stability, oversight. Rowan spoke when Victor didn't answer quickly enough. "We all want what's best for the pack," Rowan said calmly, "including protection from internal risks." Victor's jaw tightened. That was when the floor beneath him split open. It happened fast. Too fast for most eyes to track. A hidden mechanism surged upward, energy field primed, calibrated to one alpha signature. Victor, the blast threw him backward, slamming him into the reinforced railing. Gasps echoed through the hall as guards moved too late, protocols lagging just enough to matter. I didn't think. I moved. My body knew what to do before my mind caught up, years of training snapping into place. I vaulted the distance, hit the console mid-run, and ripped the access panel open with a strength no Omega was supposed to have. The field destabilized, screamed. Rowan shouted something, an order, a curse, but I was already inside the perimeter. I rerouted the flow, forced the system to ground through my own tracking band. Pain flared, white-hot and brief. Then, silence. Victor was on his feet in a second, blood at his temple, eyes blazing. His control, so carefully maintained, shattered. The room felt it. Alpha pressure slammed outward, raw and unrestrained, dropping half the council envoys to their knees. Glass cracked. Guards froze, instincts warring with orders. Victor turned on Rowan. "You," he said. Rowan backed away, face pale. "Victor, listen. You tried to execute me in my own hall. I tried to protect the pack." Rowan snapped, desperation breaking through his composure. "You're compromised. Everyone knows it. The Omega chose," I said clearly, stepping forward. Every eye in the room snapped to me. I stood beside Victor, unshaken, the last traces of the system's energy still humming under my skin. I didn't bow, didn't lower my gaze. I chose to intervene, I continued, because I was never the weak one in this equation. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Victor looked at me then, not with suspicion, not with control, but with something raw and unguarded. Recognition. Rowan tried to run. Victor didn't move. I did. I cut him off with brutal efficiency, twisting his arm behind his back and forcing him to the floor. The move was clean, precise, final. Guards rushed in, but Victor lifted a hand. "Enough," he said. They stopped instantly. Rowan was dragged away, shouting protests that echoed hollowly in the suddenly cavernous space. When it was over, when the council envoys had retreated and the hall had emptied, Victor turned to me again. "You shouldn't have been able to do that," he said quietly. I smiled, feeling something inside me finally loosen. "You shouldn't have underestimated me." For the first time since I'd been sold, since I'd been declared dead, I felt it fully. Pride, freedom, and the certainty that whatever came next, I would face it standing beside him. Not behind, not beneath. I wasn't broken. I was unleashed. The room Victor took me to had no cameras. That alone told me how serious this was. It was a small, sealed space tucked deep within the residence, soundproofed, shielded, stripped of anything decorative. A table, 2 chairs, soft, neutral light. The kind of place meant for truths that couldn't survive witnesses. The door locked behind us with a quiet finality. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The storm had passed, but the air still felt charged, like lightning waiting for permission to strike again. Victor stood near the wall, hands braced against it, head lowered. Without the weight of the pack, without the eyes of the council, he looked tired, older. "I lost control today," he said at last. Not an excuse, not a defense, a fact. Yes, I agreed. He huffed out a short, humorless breath. "You saved my life." I know. That earned me a sharp look, but no anger. Just something close to relief. Victor crossed the room and sat heavily in one of the chairs, elbows on his knees. "They were right about one thing," he said quietly. "You are a threat. To the system, to me." I leaned against the opposite wall, arms folded. "Funny. They said the same about you." His gaze lifted, met mine. There was no dominance in it now. No command, only choice. "I can end this," Victor said. "Turn you over to the council. Frame Rowan as the sole conspirator. Restore stability." The words landed hard, even though I'd been expecting them. "And you?" I asked. "I keep my position, my authority, my control." Silence stretched between us, thick and honest. "And the alternative?" I prompted. Victor's jaw tightened. "I dismantle the alliance, defy the council, restructure the pack." A pause. "Lose everything I've built." I studied him, this alpha who had built an empire on restraint and fear. Now sitting in a quiet room, asking an Omega to decide his future. "What do you want?" I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. "I don't know how to be what I am and still keep you safe," he admitted finally. The admission hit harder than any threat ever had. I pushed off the wall and stepped closer, stopping just out of reach. "You don't get to choose for me," I said. Not harsh, just firm. His eyes flicked to my face, searching. "They tried to erase me," I continued. "Sold me, used me, decided my life was inconvenient. I inhaled slowly. I could take revenge. Burn the council down and walk away. And? Victor asked. And I'm tired of running, I said. Tired of being a weapon pointed by someone else. I held his gaze. I choose freedom. Real freedom. Not revenge. The words settled between us, heavy and irrevocable. Victor stood. When he faced me again, something had shifted, resolve cutting through uncertainty. Then I choose you, he said. Not ownership, not possession. Commitment. There will be consequences, he warned. I smiled, a little shaky but real. There always are. He hesitated, then reached out. Not touching, just offering the space. The respect. I stepped into it. For the first time since the auction, since death had been written over my name, I felt seen. Not as an omega, not as a threat, as a choice. And for once, that was enough. The council chamber had never felt so small. Victor stood at its center, alone, hands clasped behind his back, not in submission but in refusal. The elders watched from their raised seats, faces carved from stone and habit. Power liked to pretend it was eternal. Victor had decided to test that illusion. I reject the ruling, he said calmly. A ripple moved through the chamber. Disbelief first, then outrage. You don't have that authority, one of the elders snapped. I do, Victor replied, because the pack follows me, not you. I watched from the edge of the room, deliberately out of place. No collar, no lowered gaze, just an omega standing where omegas were never meant to stand, arms crossed, expression bored. Rowan knelt between two guards. He looked smaller like that, stripped of posture, of certainty. The attempt on my life, Victor continued, was orchestrated by my second-in-command, with council knowledge. His eyes lifted, cold and precise. You feared loss of control, so you tried to enforce it. Rowan opened his mouth, closed it again. Victor gestured once. The evidence displayed itself. Records, communications, quiet confirmations stacked too neatly to deny. The room filled with murmurs, fractured alliances cracking audibly. This pack will no longer be governed by fear of weakness, Victor said, nor by councils that decide who deserves to live. Silence followed, heavy, uncomfortable. Then something unexpected happened. People nodded. Not everyone, not all at once, but enough. The old hierarchy didn't shatter in a single moment. It sagged, buckled, began to give way under its own weight. Later, back at the residence, the air felt different, lighter. Staff moved without that familiar flinch. Guards spoke at normal volume. Doors opened without hesitation. Change didn't announce itself with fanfare. It arrived quietly, like relief. Victor stood at the balcony overlooking the courtyard, the city stretching beyond the walls. I joined him, leaning against the railing. So, I said, surveying the scene, you just staged a political coup. He exhaled slowly. I reorganized priorities. I snorted. Sure, let's call it that. Very subtle. A corner of his mouth lifted. Not the sharp smile of command. Something softer. Real. They'll fight this, he said. The council won't forgive it. I know, I replied. Revolutions are rarely appreciated by the people being overthrown. He glanced at me, eyebrow raised. You seem awfully calm for someone at the center of it. I shrugged. I was dead last week. Everything since then feels like a bonus. The truth was, the tension I'd carried for months, years, was finally loosening its grip. I could breathe without waiting for the next command, the next betrayal. Victor rested his hands on the railing, shoulders no longer locked in that perpetual readiness. Letting go, he said quietly, is harder than holding on. I nudged him lightly with my elbow. You're doing great. 5 stars. Very progressive alpha. He laughed. Actually laughed. The sound startled us both. As the night settled over the residence, I realized something with a strange, quiet certainty. The pack was changing, and for the first time I wasn't surviving inside it. I belonged, on my own terms. The balcony was quiet, in a way that felt earned. The city below pulsed with distant life, lights, motion. the low hum of something that didn't care who ruled above it. A breeze moved through the open space, cool against my skin, carrying the scent of rain and possibility. I leaned on the railing and let myself exist without bracing for impact. Victor joined me a moment later, close but not crowding. That mattered. Everything about us had changed, and he understood that space was no longer something he took. It was something he offered. "You could leave," he said. "Not a test, not a warning. An option." I smiled faintly. "You're very bad at being manipulative." "I'm learning," he replied dryly. I turned to face him. "I thought about it," I admitted. "Walking away, disappearing again. I'm good at that, I know. But staying doesn't mean belonging to you," I continued. "Or the pack. Or the story they tried to write for me." His gaze was steady, open. "It means I choose to stay," I said. "On my terms." Victor nodded once. "Then that's how it will be. No contracts, no vows, no claims, just agreement." The bond between us, quiet now, settled into something less volatile, hummed in the background, no longer a threat but a shared awareness. It didn't demand submission or dominance. It asked for honesty. "I'm not yours," I said lightly. "I know," Victor replied. "And I'm not your savior." "Good," I said. "I hate owing people." That earned a soft laugh. He rested his forearms on the railing beside mine, mirroring my posture without copying it. "So," he said, "what now?" I considered the question. The open sky, the absence of fear. "Now," I said, "now I stop pretending I'm fragile." I straightened, stretching my arms overhead. "And you stop pretending you're unbreakable." He glanced at me sideways. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," I agreed cheerfully. "But very freeing." We stood there until the city lights blurred into something almost gentle. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was standing on borrowed time. I wasn't property. I wasn't a weapon. I wasn't dead. I was a choice. And I chose me. Epilogue. Dead omegas don't come back alone. The world adjusted. Slowly. Reluctantly. But it did. The council fractured, then reformed into something less absolute. Packs began asking questions they'd never dared voice before. Control stopped being synonymous with strength, and weakness lost its usefulness as a threat. Victor's pack became different, not softer, just honest. As for me, I stopped being a ghost. I trained when I wanted to, left when I needed to, stayed because I chose to, not because I was owned, protected, or contained. The title of Omega stopped feeling like a limitation and started feeling like information. Useful, neutral. Victor and I learned each other in the quiet spaces between crises, not as an alpha and an omega, not even as true mates most days. As partners, sometimes we argued, sometimes we laughed, sometimes the bond flared warm and steady, reminding us of what we'd survived to reach this point. The pack watched, learned, adapted. And me? I walked through the world without lowering my gaze. Turns out, when you come back from the dead, you don't just reclaim your life. You take everyone else's expectations with you and leave them behind. After all, dead omegas don't come back alone. They come back changed.